7 major religions, is Christianity one of them?
Yes.
It is. Okay, I never have heard you say that whenever you name them all.
I always assume it's assumed, so I apologize. I was naming the other ones.
Okay, and the second one is, where can we find the Texas standards? Is it online somewhere?
They're on the State Board of Education website.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if I have a link to that on my website. You do it?
Any other? Through the back.
Stacey McMahon again. I didn't ask a question earlier. I just helped Rhonda with her information. Mr. Ratliff, okay, you and I've discussed this before, so I have a question in regards to this because I've provided you this information.
Okay.
On January 31st, 2013, excuse me, there was a education hearing in our Senate, and the director of CSCO, Dr. LOWV, acknowledged before the committee that the Boston Tea Party were taught as terrorist lesson plans, quote unquote, in our schools for 6 years. When asked when it was removed, Dr. LOWV, excuse me, said that it was moved 2 weeks prior, approximately, to the hearing. So that was January of this year.
Okay.
So for 6 years, we taught our kids in our Texas schools that Boston Tea Party are terrorists. Also, too, in the same hearing, he acknowledges that the answer to one of the questions wasn't, first he acknowledged that the Islam lesson was the longest and the largest lesson out of all of the lessons on religion with CSCO. Dr. LOWV did.
Okay.
Anyone can access this off the Texas Senate site under January 31, 2013. He acknowledged that one of the questions that upset a lot of parents was, the answer was, quote unquote, Allah is God.
Okay.
And he acknowledged also that that was removed, and when asked why that lesson plan was removed, he said it was because he had a bunch of blowback from parents. My question to you is, have you looked at that lesson, have you watched that hearing to hear that the ones that you 1 minute would say are conspiracy theorists, and the next minute you acknowledge that they are objectionable? Have you watched that lesson, that hearing?
No. But I will tell you, as a parent who's had 2 kids go through the public schools, my children have never been taught that the Boston Tea Party patriots were terrorists.
But will you acknowledge that some schools have taught that? And that question is in the test?
I don't know how it's taught. I know how it appears on the written page, but I don't know how thousands of teachers teach that lesson in their classroom.
But if the answer is Allah is God, then obviously they're teaching.
Well,
Okay,
I'm gonna.
This is important. A professor at TCU who teaches theology says the fact is, in that language, the word Allah, it translates as God.
Yes. I don't disagree with that.
Even Christians in the Middle East refer to God as Allah. It's just their language. And so the difference is education versus advocacy. We are teaching kids this is what they believe, or this is how God is pronounced. There's a difference between that and saying this is what you should believe. We're teaching kids how to think, not what to think. And so,
Why did you remove it?
I have no idea. You have to talk to them.
Well, the other point as a theology student, if you go back to the beginning of Abraham, you find that God is the same God for the Jews, the Christians, and Islam.
That's not what they teach, though, respectfully.
But that's the way it is.
About 700 AD.
Let's not get into a discussion of
I'm
history.
saying, this is not, there's a lot of difference between comparative religion and believing that if you speak something, and I guess, as I said, I got chewed up this afternoon unnecessarily. And also, I grew up with this kind of a, oh my God, if you don't say the Pledge of Allegiance, then you are automatically not an American. And that's not the way schools are. You ought to be able to think for yourself, given, and this is my rant, and then I'll stop. You ought to be able to think for yourself, given the tools. Given the tools.
Yeah, are you?
I'm sorry, I'm apologizing, I just.
Thank you, and stop. Because moderators.
I understand, look, I just got to say, I shouldn't do this. But this
No,
is,
you're not
Ladies
the
and
moderator
gentlemen,
either.
ladies and
I'll
gentlemen.
stop, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, thank you.
Yeah, you're wasting our time.
We have a very diverse group of people in this room, and I think that,
Did you have something to say, sir? I'd appreciate it if you would stand up and address everyone.
Why don't you come over here and tell me?
I just
Yeah,
feel,
There.
excuse me,
You're
there'll be no
in fact
crossing
the
off.
biggest
Oh, no.
in this room, and that's my problem. I have an issue with that.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
say anything.
Excuse me, our president is speaking.
We turn from light to heat. I don't think if we had another year to stay here and talk about this, that we would all come to the same conclusions. I do think some very interesting questions have been raised. I've learned a lot. I have more to learn. I have no opinion at this point in time. And if you do, please keep it carefully. Thank you so much for coming to participate. Mr. Ratliff, you came a long way. We're grateful for it. From the horse's mouth. Ms. Beal, you've done a great deal of work and research on this. And to make it possible to this group of people, I hope that thanks is expressed to you. Ladies and gentlemen.
One last thing, if my website is thomasratliff.com. On that website is my email address and my cell phone number. If you can't find me, you're not trying very hard. I also have a Dropbox that I put a whole bunch of information out there for the public to see. If you're familiar with Dropbox, you can go to www.dropbox.com, and then you can sign in with, the username is debate@thomasratliff.com, and the password is CSCO. And you can see everything that I had at the podium with me that night at the debate, and I gave all of that information to Senator Patrick in my notebook. And then anybody in the public is welcome to look at. These are the resources I look to when I answer questions like this. But again, this should be a discussion you should be having with your local school board and your teachers and your principals about how they're addressing these issues in Marshall, Kilgore, Longview, wherever you are. In non-C-scope schools, get engaged and ask questions and make sure what's being taught is the Texas standards and it's taught in a way that your community values. This shouldn't be a State Board of Education decision. I have 180 school districts in my district, and I can't possibly know them all and know the values of those communities. I barely know the one that my kids go to. But I represent my district to the best of my ability and try to preserve for them the decisions that they want to make locally and not have Austin take those decisions away from them. So, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.